Chapter 8 Three Pistols. September 1995, Trois-Rivières. Gil shifted in the LTD's flattened driver's seat, stirring the ghosts of smoked cigarettes, spilled drinks, and stale farts. His hands, trembling with artificial stimulants and genuine anxiety, fidgeted the Ruger 22 Magnum across his lap. Somewhere close by, a police siren screamed down the dingy streets. Just relax, this will be a piece of cake. How many times in his life had he convinced himself that something would be a piece of cake? Wasn't that exactly what he had told himself before he had become involved with Jacques Talbot? Now look at him, sitting in a hot car, waiting outside some slimeball hotel with a gun in his hands, ready to murder a man before he had the chance to do the same. How did he get himself into these situations? Shit happens, now deal with it. One hand tightened around the pistol grip. He felt the crosshatch dig into his palm. He would deal with it all right. Although Jacques Talbot wasn't a sworn member of the Hells Angels, the man followed many of their principles, including their methods of bill collection. If a person owed Jacques Talbot money, he would remind them of their debt. If his warning went unheeded, it would be followed by a severe beating as another reminder. If, by chance, the debtor still refused to pay, they would find themselves very dead shortly after. Gil had received his beating 2 weeks ago. The Auberge Centerville's neon sign flickered off. Gil cast a nervous glance over at his quarry's Chevelle. It was possible that Jacques had already left, trusting his ride would be left alone for the night. He shook his head. His long hair was damp with sweat, despite the relatively cool nighttime breeze. I would have seen him leave. He's just killing time. Killing time indeed. He stared at the innocuously small pistol between his sweating hands, loaded with 7 bullets plus 1 round chambered. He preferred something with a bit more kick, but beggars couldn't afford to be choosers. Besides, the odd selection might throw the police, and more importantly, Jacques Talbot's brother, off his scent. 8 bullets. It was a fair price to pay to get his life back. Motion at the doors. A bulky man was swaggering out into the trash-strewn parking lot. Gorilla neck, jean jacket, buzz cut and a long beard. Jacques Talbot in the flesh. Gil took a deep breath and cranked the LTD over. The starter croaked, and the valves wheezed as the engine coughed to life. He'd do the owner a favor and ditch the piece of shit in the St. Lawrence after he was finished with it. He was rolling by the time the girl staggered out of the bar. She laughed, sounding like a cat in heat, and stumbled after Talbot. The top buttons of her blouse had come undone, and her bottle-blonde hair hung in ratty tassels in front of her manic eyes. A junkie, if ever he'd seen one. His foot slipped off the gas pedal. Gil bit his bottom lip. He kept his eyes on the girl, watched as she drew nearer to his target. "Don't follow him. Don't do it, you stupid plot," he muttered. Unheeded, the woman sauntered after her man, toward her own death. Gil sighed and creaked the old car ahead. 8 divided by 2 still equaled enough bullets to end 2 lives. Down went the driver's window. Forward rolled the LTD. His heart thumped in rhythm with the tired engine as his cocaine buzz disappeared under the onrushing flow of adrenaline. He neared the pair, gun ready, teeth grinding. They had their backs to him. Jacques grunted something, and the girl screeched laughter. He was right behind them. "Hey, Jacques!" Talbot turned, just in time to catch Gil's first bullet in the throat. He staggered back like a punch-drunk boxer, clawing at the new hole below his Adam's apple. 1. Gil fired twice more. The second and third shots hit him in the chest. Down he went. A knockout. 2, 3. The girl spun to face him. Her blacked-out eyes were wide behind a yellow curtain of damaged hair. She was young, maybe 19, already haggard and worn-out looking. She opened her perfect little mouth to scream. Gil silenced her with a bullet between her teeth. 4. She was down with the first shot. Gil divided the rounds between them until he had counted to 8. Guns empty. June 21st, 1998. Arklay Forest. The gun's empty. Gil cracked his watery eyes open, cast a weary glance over his shoulder. Close by, there was the rustling of grass, snapping twigs, and of course, those mindless cries. Those freaks were getting close again. After a moment's deliberation, he flung the useless .32 into the trees. The gun is empty, and I'm lost. I'm lost and I'm dying. He forced himself not to weep, and nearly succeeded. A suppressed whimper escaped between his cracked and swollen lips as he blundered to his feet. The world blurred and disappeared for a moment like a television with bad reception. Last night he had spiked a fever, and his thoughts were getting more and more muddled by the hour. I'll die on my own unless, of course, they get to me first. The moaning was getting louder every second. He groaned and thrashed his way forward through a tangle of dead trees. He had to make it back to the highway. He wouldn't survive another night out in the woods. Don't think about the woods. Think about the highway. Don't think about your pain. Don't think about dying. Another groan, long and drawn out. Wait for us, they seemed to be pleading. Gil sobbed briefly, reliving his encounter with his pursuers. They had tried to eat him. What the hell was wrong with them? He had seen all sorts of crazy drug behavior, but he had never witnessed anything like that. And the smell, even with his nose crushed into his head, he could smell them, like they had shit themselves and sat in it for days. They won't stop. They'll chase you until you drop, and eat whatever is left, Henri explained, smug as usual. No. He shook his head as if to emphasize this point. He wouldn't die. He simply needed to get back to the road. He didn't care if he was arrested. He wanted out, wanted to get to a hospital. He wanted a doctor to set his jaw, stitch his face, to bandage his legs. Another stifled sob. His legs. Oh God, he couldn't even bring himself to look at them, at the torn and ragged flesh, puffed up into livid purple sausages that pressed against their shredded denim casings. And they itched. If he had a knife, he would have been cutting the skin off his calves. He had never suffered the cocaine bugs like some of the other heavy users, but he doubted even the worst flakehead felt bugs like this. Just find the highway. Where was he going? He had been blundering through the woods for 2 days. How had he managed to stray so far away from the road? Sure, he had cracked his head and lost a gallon of blood, but he was still lucid enough to put his thoughts together. He should be able to find out where he was. But how? He wasn't the outdoors type. He didn't know the area at all. The skies had been a grey sheet of lead every day. Impossible to tell where the sun or stars were. He didn't know which direction to head, but he had to keep moving. Those boozed-up freaks made sure of that. What was wrong with them? Why didn't they chase him down and finish him off? Why were they content to take their time, howling brainlessly after him? They wouldn't even stop to sleep. 2 days without rest, moving, bleeding, starving, drinking water out of puddles. Every hour the itching in his legs grew worse. Every hour the bugs crawled further up. They wouldn't stop. They were tormenting him, toying with him. "They're punishing you," his grandmère scolded. "Punishing you for a life of sin. This is the wrath of God, a God you closed your eyes to." He didn't deserve this. He would change. He would turn himself in. He would face the consequences of his actions. It's too late for penance. It was too late a long time ago. Maybe selling that poison and stealing cars could be forgiven, but as soon as you took a life, you had damned yourself. Lachance whimpered. Out here in this endless forest, all pretext was stripped away. His rotten core lay exposed, naked. He clearly remembered stealing cigarettes and selling them to the other kids, kiffing booze from the dépanneur. He recalled people that he had robbed, beaten, lives he had ruined with the shit he had sold them. Tears spilled out of his puffy eyes and rolled down his cheeks. He could plainly see four faces belonging to people whose lives he had ended. Gil wept, genuinely remorseful for the first time in a quarter century. His pursuers answered, calling to him, beckoning him to join them. "It's too late, Gil," Henri stated. It wasn't too late. He would change. He would atone for what he had done. He just needed to get out of these fucking woods. "You'll never get out. They won't let you leave. Please." Who was he talking to? God? The voices in his head? Those drug freaks? He settled for all of the above. "I don't want to die. I'll change." His right hand, moving on its own volition, sloppily signed the cross. His mouth, stiff and inaccurate, began breathlessly wording a Hail Mary. It was the first prayer to leave his lips since his childhood. "Pray for us sinners, now and at..." "Now and at..." he sobbed. "The hour of our death." He broke through the copse of trees, into a large clearing that looked like the surface of another planet. Sandy soil the color of powdered cheese drifted in dunes. Puddles of blood-red liquid, slick with an oily sheen, collected in the low spots. Every tree was a twisted black skeleton. Steel girders, orange and scabby with corrosion, poked out of the ground. The wind kicked up momentarily, assaulting his sinuses with a sulphurous reek that brought fresh tears to his eyes. He loped ahead on his infected legs, his feet sunk into the gritty soil. He trudged ahead, past a collection of 50-gallon drums, rusted and melting into the alien landscape. He quickened his pace. There was a sign up ahead, ancient, stained with rust and barely legible. West Ridge Tailings Management Zone. Danger. Arsenic. Lynn Gordon Mining. An old mine. Gil attempted a smile. Near the other tree line, a double black stripe of iron rails bisected the strange landscape. Railway tracks. They've got to lead somewhere. If I follow them, I'll get out. He hurried along, keeping one arm wrapped around his crushed chest to hold his loose ribs in place. His tormentors were in the field now as well, lurching along like drunks. He took his eyes off them, set them ahead, toward the railway tracks, toward the chance of salvation. "Not dead yet," he mumbled, and then scratched furiously at his legs. God, they itched.